Thank you very much. It's been, I never really dreamed of actually being an entrepreneur. I know you're big into the entrepreneurial lifestyle, and it wasn't something that I had sought out in life. It was just something that I kind of fell into because of my previous experience in radio and media. Podcast became a part of my job description. And then when I found myself trying to find out what my next gig was, the skills that I had procured, the experience that I had, and the timing just worked out well.
Yeah. So kind of go through that story with me about how it actually happened.
Sure. So it really starts my first real job out of college. I worked for a talk radio station here in New Jersey, one of the largest talk radio stations in the country, working in the newsroom, helping out with, morning news, morning weather, updating the website, stuff like that. And while I was there, it was around 2007, 2008. I can never remember exactly when it popped up, but the iPhone had been announced, the very first iPhone. And with it, Apple had announced an actual podcast store. Podcasts had existed for a little while before that, but they were really, really annoying and difficult to get access to. But now with the podcast store and the iPhone, it became a lot easier for people to access this content. So anyway, I really podcasts, show up on my radar. I'm looking at it, I was like, oh, these are interesting. I wonder if we could use it. And I basically went to my boss at the time. I was like, maybe we should have a podcast for the morning news. And he's like, if it doesn't cost me money and I don't have to do any more work, sure, go for it. So I took our early morning news content, packaged it up, removed the ads, removed some of the, the timely content that didn't make sense. And we started publishing our first podcast. And it was so rudimentary that I actually had to go in and physically update the RSS feed every day and input it as code, as opposed to now where you just go to a website, enter a couple of things and hit send. So that was my first experience with podcasting. After that, I went to work for a large media organization. The Wall Street Journal had a radio network, and they were pretty forward thinking and pretty advanced in the space of digital technology. And they had already been doing podcasts for a while. So I went to work for them, and my job was actually 50% work on the radio, 50% producing podcasts. So for 8 years, I every day was hosting, editing, producing, and launched a few podcasts, and was doing that for a long time. And truthfully thought I was going to be doing that job for a really long time. I was in conversation with someone about a promotion to kind of head up digital audio for our unit, right? They were going to really focus their efforts on podcasts and make a big deal about it. This was right at the end of 2014. And the day I was going to go on my interview for it, they said, something came up, can we push this back a couple of weeks and we'll reschedule or bring it in. It's like, okay. Well, a couple of weeks later, it turned out the reason they rescheduled was because they were planning on laying us all off. They were shutting down the radio network. Yeah, they were shutting down the entire radio network, and they decided to just clean sweep. They let go everybody, radio, podcast, the whole shebang. We were all gone, which was, by the way, terrible timing because at the end of 2014, this little podcast called Serial came out, and podcasting hit a major renaissance moment, right? That was when podcasting really hit the mainstream, really started to hit pop culture. More and more people were talking about it. And it was kind of like that first rocket boost of popularity for the podcasting space. So it was weird timing. Anyway, 2015, I don't have a job anymore, trying to figure out what my next gig is going to be. And while I'm out there trying to find my next job, some of the people that I used to interview for the Wall Street Journal reached out and were like, we used to record podcasts with you all the time. And it turned out that these were actually pretty good for helping us to grow our business. So do you think you could help us with our own podcast? It's like, yeah, I don't know. Sure. Why not? I realized all I really need is a computer to do this. Yeah, I could do this. And so I said, sure. And I formed a small little business, put my name, officially on the records as doing this. And I figured, all right, why don't I just do this, make a little bit of extra money on the side while I actually go out there and try and find a real full-time job. And sure enough, one client led to two clients led to three clients. One day I got contacted out of the blue. The first time I really got a client that wasn't from my own network, right? Somebody wasn't referred to me or wasn't somebody I'd known prior. He wanted to launch a podcast. we said, great, let's do it. My experience at the Journal helped me, communicate with him and put some trust in me. At the time, there weren't a lot of podcast producers like myself. And his show launched, and he was very successful very early on. And a lot of other folks in his space wanted to get into podcasting as well. And I was fortunate and grateful that, when they asked him, hey, I love your show, how do you do it? He would just say, you talk to Mathew. And so lots more people started to come my way. We started to grow faster and faster. And 2017, I decided I stopped looking for other work. I quit my part-time jobs and I went, full force into running this podcast production business. And now we do production, consulting, podcast audits, remote recording assistance, if that's your thing. And like you were kind of alluding to with the local, we just opened up a new podcast studio here in Jersey, and we are trying to use that as a way to focus efforts on what I think is an important emergence of localized digital content, both audio and video.
So can you go into a little bit more about that? Because the thing is,